Stanislav. All right, guys, welcome to Expat American. I'm here with a collection of random men. We all live in Moscow, but we all have different stories from different places. Thank you for joining us. Of course, as you know, the Alaska Summit just happened, and we wanted to come to you and discuss based on our varying levels of expertise. And I have a few questions I'm going to ask the guys, and we'll get their feedback. And then I'm going to be looking for answers from you. So thank you for joining. And without further ado, all right, great. So I see we got 24 people watching. That's a good start. We'll start off with intros, and anyone of you 24, 34, if you want to comment and let me know if you can hear us and see us okay, that would be much appreciated. But to start, just beneath me is Stanislav Krapivnic, and I'm going to let him explain who he is. Stan?
Stas.
I do that all the time.
As a random guy, they just have me walking by his computer, and all of a sudden I got a call.
I know another Stas, and you're another Stan Stas. So, okay, go ahead.
So tell who I am. That's
yeah,
what
just in brief, you are. We'll do like brief introductions for like 15 seconds, and then we'll roll into the questions.
I'm the guy that was on a couple of your videos.
Fan, guys.
Spent about half my life down in the South, in the great state in North Carolina, and a little bit of Texas. Speaking proper English, proper Southern English. Former U.S. Army officer, captain, promotable. Left. Said thanks. I won't take the major's rank political wise. Former director of supply chain and oil and gas services. Consultant and military political expert, and the guy that runs down to the front lines once in a while.
And where were you born again?
That's the only risk in my life one more time, which my wife doesn't appreciate. But
where were you born again?
Oh, where was I born? The nice tourist spot that's been under Ukrainian fire for the last 11 years, Lugansk.
Yeah, that's what I thought. Okay, so you are Russian, but you were baked in the U.S., so you have a brain for both worlds, as one could say.
Yeah, I moved to Russia when I was 8, 7.5. Grew up there, finished university a couple times, 3. And spent 11 years in the military.
Okay. All right. Philip Hutchinson next to me. Tell us who you are, Philip.
Hi, guys. So, obviously my name is Philip. I've been in Russia since March. I'm from the UK. I'm a British and Irish national, and due to be hopefully a Russian citizen by the end of the year. I'm actually putting my application in tomorrow for that, because I've just had a Russian child to my Russian wife. So very exciting time for me at the moment. I'm also CEO of Moscow Connect, and I have a YouTube channel, which I'm sure a lot of you watching have seen online. We've got about 14k subscribers now, so not quite as big as Joe's, but we'll get there eventually.
Well, congratulations on the child, Philip. And you have a political background as well, correct?
Yeah, so I was I'm a former Conservative Party political consultant, and I advised the last 3 prime ministers from Boris Johnson onwards up to Rishi Sunak until we lost, obviously, the last general election in 2024 to the Labour Party. So
wow,
some good.
So we'll definitely want to get your perspective on this weekend and what might happen coming up. All right, James, how about you? You can't hear us? Or you can't hear me? Uh-oh. Stanislav, can you hear me?
Yeah, I hear you fine.
Okay.
Yeah,
all right. Philip too? Okay, cool. So maybe James will come back. All right. Well, I'm sure the audience really wants to hear what both of you think, because Stanislav, you have military experience. You've lived in both countries. You've served the U.S. Now you're living in Russia as a man of many talents. And Philip, you come from British politics. You said you advised the prime ministers over there. So Stanislav, I want to start with you. What was the point of the Alaska summit? And were the objectives reached, do you think? And what was the fallout, if there was any, from it, would you say?
Well, there's a big there's a big movement north of Pokrovsk, Krasnoarmeysk, south of Kramatorsk and Konstantinovka. It's been pushed back slightly by the Ukrainians, but that's after they threw everything they had in, all the reserves and the vaunted Azov Corps made up by the Azov Brigade. That, by the way, last battle they were sent into, they all ran away. But that's beside the point. And there's now up in Kupiansk, the front's collapsing and Russian forces are pouring through. So when Trump comes out, there's a million Russian dead. I mean, that's absolute crap. Whether or not he knows it's crap, I don't know, because that's the type of lies that are being fed. On the other hand, off the Ukrainian side, it's hard, of course, to pin down the number of casualties, but there's somewhere between 1.5 to 2. I've heard from people that with sources, anywhere from 1.5 to 2.5 million dead. That's 200s. And you can figure about just as many invalided 300s that aren't coming back to the battlefield. According to the Red Cross, there are 400,000 missing. And when you say missing, if they haven't been picked up, I'm sorry if I injure anybody's sensibilities. If they haven't been picked up within a couple days, more likely what's left of them is about bones, because the pigs, the rats, and the dogs are having a feast. And the Ukrainian authorities don't want them back. I was there interviewing, did on the spot reporting from the 4 container trucks, refrigeration trucks that they bring in. They try to give away 2,212 remains, partial remains, full remains, but identified remains. Ukraine said no. There was a bunch of us journalists over there, which, by the way, made us a really good target, because they're standing like frick. There's like about 30 journalists, 4 trucks, right beside it, not far from an MTS base. We're in Bryansk, or 40 kilometers from the front. I mean, it's a high-margin dream target right there. Luckily, I'm still alive. Nothing came flying in. But the Ukrainians eventually accepted those bodies only on the condition that the families didn't ask even for burial, all out of their pockets. But that's the level of fatalities that they're receiving. I mean, massive fatalities. And among Merck's massive fatalities. In Kursk, identified about 2,000 Poles, about 1,500 Colombians, about 1,200 Georgians, which for a country of 3.5 million, well, maybe 4.5 million when you count Georgians outside of Georgia, that's a hell of a lot of people. About 190 Americans and about 140 Brits, plus sprinkling everybody else. So that's a lot of Mercs alone in that area. So the reality is quite different. And no matter what the West says, they know what the reality is on the battlefield. It's not a stalemate. It hasn't been a stalemate in a year and a half. It's been a slow grind through incredibly built-up fortified areas, with Russia conserving its forces and using artillery, FOBs, fuel-air bombs, direct missile fire, and so on to just exterminate everything in its path. So the West knows this, and it was Witkoff that came running to Putin from Trump, asking for this meeting. So when Trump went off, Vladimir Putin came over there, and he needed this meeting. No. Actually, Russia doesn't need this meeting. This war is going to be ended on the battlefield, regardless of anything they do. But the good thing about this meeting was it's the first meeting of 2 nuclear superpowers in 4 years. And there's a direct war going on between those 2 superpowers. because this isn't even a proxy war. This is America fighting a direct war. I've been saying this for 2.5 years. I was getting some weird looks. New York Times, thank you very much, confirmed everything I said. In the HIMARS, there are American soldiers firing those HIMARS. American generals are planning the attacks. British generals are planning some also, like on Snake Island, that lost a lot of Ukrainian special forces trying to take an island that in the end nobody needs. It is abandoned from both sides. There's Kursk was planned out by NATO generals, and the Ukrainians are just the meat that's supposed to do the mission and die in place as needed. And by the way, and the HIMARS, as I said, the HIMARS attacks are Americans firing, American soldiers, loading, firing, and targeting on Russian civilians. And the New York Times absolutely confirmed all of that in their piece. So, Russia doesn't need this meeting. I think on the Russian side, they've already figured out there's absolutely no agreement that's going to happen, real agreement. With the West, it's going to be finished on the battlefield. But it's good to have the nuclear powers talking. And there's a lot more interest on the U.S. side, if we're going to talk realistically, than just Ukraine. There's multiple interests that the U.S. went in with. One is this fantasy that they're going to get Russia pulled away from China, and then they can use Russia against China, which is this neocon fantasy. For the neocons, they just don't want to destroy Russia right off the bat, or at least neutralize Russia from being an active participant while they take care of China and then come back to Russia. 2, let's make a deal on energy and resources and Russian manufacturing, because Russian, as somebody that was a director of supply chain and heavy industry, I made sure we bought a lot of stuff from Russia that was extremely high quality, and at about 40% cheaper than anything you can get in Europe or in the U.S. Steel goods, semi-finished goods, fully finished goods that went to our manufacturers to finish into oil and gas equipment. And those markets, 150 million person market, plus massive manufacturing, that's all gone out of the U.S. Supply chain right now, out of the U.S. market. And those companies won't back in. So I think those were the issues behind the Ukrainian war facade, the other deeper issues to discuss.
So what you're saying is Trump made this meeting happen because the battlefield looks so terrible against Ukraine. It looks so bad for Ukraine that Trump made this come together, and it's still not gonna change much as far as physically, militarily, but maybe we're all a little bit safer if Russia and the US are gonna have some sort of peace. Is that what you mean?
Well, the minimum you need communications, because in a nuclear age, I mean, when you've got psychopaths going, hey, let's in the U.S. government, let's give them tomahawks. Let's throw some tomahawks at Moscow. Well, tomahawks are nuclear capable weapons. Any tomahawk, by the way, Taurus missile is also nuclear capable. Any of those missiles are flying toward Moscow, Moscow treats that as a nuclear attack and retaliates as a nuclear attack, which means the West goes up in smoke and probably Russia gets hit back. But that's the thing. You get 3 minutes to figure out what's flying in that missile. Let's see. We can't tell. We can't tell until that missile hits. Is it a decapitation strike, or is it one of those let's try to piss Moscow off and throw something in their direction strikes? You're playing at this point. It's not Russian roulette. It's Polish roulette. Mm-hmm. If you don't know what Polish roulette is, that's when you take one round out of the drum and spin it. So, you got 5 and 6 chances of blowing your brains out. That's where we're at right now, if they actually going down this road. Right. So, we've gone past stupid at this point on the Western side.
Okay. Well, I mean, it's been over 3 years, so it's easier for me to become jaded. But still, when the meeting was set up and was happening, and when it ended and Trump said it was a 10 out of 10, as an American living in Russia, I was hopeful and I felt a little bit better that my home country is making friends with the country I live in now, hopefully. But Philip, I want to ask you, because you're a British guy. I mean, I heard before we went on that Ukraine has already rejected the settlement that Trump and Putin have proposed. And, for me, it looks like my two countries are making friends. But for you, it's a different perspective because, of course, you're from the UK and you helped prime ministers. And I also heard that that a bunch of European leaders, including Starmer, I believe, are headed to DC with Zelensky.
Yeah, I mean, they're probably on the plane now. So probably,
So what is your perspective and feeling on this whole matter, being a British guy who's involved?
Yeah, I mean, my understanding is at the moment they've agreed to security guarantees, which Keir Starmer put together with his coalition of the willing with the European leaders, and apparently that was going to be like the main thing that Zelensky was looking for. But I mean, if you look at it, just sort of taking a step back a minute and just looking at the whole, the whole situation from Europe's point of view, I don't think Europe really is ready for this war to end. I mean, Zelensky definitely doesn't want the war to end because he's got Europe in his pocket. Europe are actively funding Ukraine. I mean, I saw something come out of Turkey the other day, for example, saying 50 million a month is going to offshore accounts to Dubai and elsewhere. And people were saying, oh, this is bullshit or whatever. I can tell you it's not. I mean, I've had businesses in Dubai and seen the Ukrainian politicians get richer. I can see Ukrainian politicians buying their daughters and sons, villas on Palm Jumeirah, and they didn't have this kind of money before. It's the British taxpayers' money, it's the Europeans' money, it's the EU countries' money that is directly going to fund the lifestyles of these politicians. They're absolutely loving the last few years. I don't think it's ready to end. Now, look, the last time Zelensky was in the Oval Office, it completely blew up. He was basically told to leave. He was kicked out. This time he's going along with backup, shall we say, which is this coalition of the willing amongst all these leaders that are currently, on their planes on the way to DC.
But Philip, correct me if I'm wrong. I did hear that Trump has already said, I'm meeting with Zelensky first before I meet with these other guys, like separately. So, maybe that's because Trump already knows that he's trying to do that.
Yeah, I mean, of course, he probably will. I think the other leaders, he's been busy. The last few days, he's been meeting leader after leader. He's been trying to, do as much networking amongst the EU and especially, Keir Starmer that's sort of leading this coalition to try and get them on the side, because he's worried that, it might blow up again, really. I mean, I think ultimately Trump now is going to make a decision, and his decision is going to be very much, I'm going to align myself with whoever's showing more willingness to actually move in the right direction so that we can end the war and we can actually stop the killing and from both sides. But I think ultimately at the moment, if you look at the whole picture, actually Vladimir Putin has shown a lot more willingness towards Trump to do that than any of the European leaders or Zelensky has done. And I think Zelensky's going to try and he's going to have a lot of demands that he just hasn't really got the right, or he's not in the position to be asking for. And if ultimately we sort of look at what needs to be done to end this conflict, there's going to have to be settlements, and by settlements, I mean there has to be agreements as to what land remains Russian, which land remains Ukrainian, who's getting what, and how we're divvying up the pot of land that's there. It's not going to be a case of one side gets everything they want and the other side doesn't. But at the moment, or looking back to previous meetings and how Zelensky's been over the last few years, it's like he doesn't really want to negotiate, and he doesn't think that's on the table. Now, we just need to see now what side Trump is going to take, because that is going to have quite a big factor, because ultimately I can't see the EU taking their own path completely against the US. They do have a lot of influence when it comes to this, completely. I mean, another thing I'll mention is, look, I mean, this is a president who is notorious for meeting people like Vladimir Putin, like Kim Jong-un. Keir Starmer hasn't even picked up the phone to try and speak to Vladimir Putin. Now, in business, if you don't like someone, sometimes you still have to deal with people you don't like. And Trump knows that. And he's running the United States like he's run his businesses. You know, he might love Putin, he might hate him, but that doesn't really matter, because when you're in a business relationship with someone, or any relationship with someone that you know you have to deal with that person, you have to open dialogue with them. That's the only way you're going to be able to come to a resolution. Just completely, you know, just brushing it off and not even bothering to call the guy, you know, it's not a good thing at all. And you know, at least some of the European leaders have at least met Putin or had a phone call with Putin. But Keir Starmer, who seems to be trying to or says he's sort of leading a lot of this sort of coalition from Europe, just wants to keep denying it. And you know, I mean, from their perspective, you know, it was pretty much a state visit the other day. You know, the red carpet rolled out. There was a banquet, dinner, eating, you know, filet mignon, and it was sort of in a ballroom with Putin as the guest of honor. But look, sometimes you have to entertain people, even if you don't know. Now, look, I think historically, the current US president has a pretty good relationship with Putin. I mean, I think he probably does like him on some level. I mean, he's had quite enough trips to Moscow, you know, to do so. But regardless of that, you know, I think they did the right thing, and at least he's going in that sort of right direction to get things settled with him.
Well, hopefully, when Zelensky gets there, Trump will tell him that the press and JD Vance are waiting for him in the Oval Office, and we'll have a.
And they're going to beat him like a stuffed pinata. Take him up by his gonads and beat him like a pinata.
You know, I want to get to James now, but I did think when that maybe that is the moment where JD Vance secured his presidency for 3.5 years from now. That Oval Office moment. I'm not sure. We'll see. Anyway,
it's like the mafia movies where you go into the other room and it's all in plastic.
I mean, whenever did a vice president in the Oval Office with press, you know, dress down the leader of another nation? You know, it's definitely, whether you like it or not, it was definitely an epic moment. So, James, is your sound working now?
I hope so.
Good, it is. All right. So why don't you introduce yourself, you know, tell us a little bit about who you are and give us your perspective on this whole situation, the Alaska summit, and what may or may not be happening.
Yeah, so just to quickly introduce myself, of course, James, I'm from England, and I realised that my country was being strip-mined from within, and we had a lot of problems over there with regards to things. I'm not going to say them. Okay, but anyway,
exactly.
We had a lot of problems with.
We all know.
But however, I just got fed up of paying my taxes towards it, to be honest, and I just felt like the right thing to do would most definitely be in the country that is willing to stand diametrically opposed against whatever that globalist Davosian rubbish is, right? So yeah, that was my kind of thing. So of course, when I moved here about 2 years ago, and yeah, like I realized as soon as I got here. Now, interestingly, I only came here, right, because I lost loads of students due to sanctions because I'm a teacher, and I lost loads of students because they suddenly couldn't pay me overnight. And then I was like, right, I need one of those MIR cards. I literally arrived here and I took a quick look around and I was like, why would I want to live anywhere else? That would be ridiculous. Like, why would I want to downgrade? Are you mad? So anyway, before you know it, 2 years on, wife, kid, moving towards my residency and hopefully my citizenship in the future. That's me.
Very good. So any opinion on the Alaska summit? Any predictions for us?
So any predictions? So actually, I want to come back to something Philip was saying with regards to, the business relationship side of things, right? Because, I've been thinking about that a lot recently. Now, there's two things specifically I've been thinking about. I think in chronological order, the first thing would actually be with regards to, the thing is, I'm starting to think that everything, never listen to a word Trump says That's the first thing, because everything he says, he just does something else for a start, right? So, he was furious with Putin the other month before, his meeting, he's shaking hands and he's got all the, he's got all of the aircrafts out to show off his pretty toys. And, I just looked at that and I thought, right, so he's just psyop in the media at this point, right? That's kind of where I'm getting with it. It's like
Exactly.
he's trying to say to the media, look over here. This is, and then just going and doing something else. So I've just learned, like, if anyone says Trump says, I'll just turn it off. Basically, yeah. Trump says, forget it. I don't want to know what he says anymore. Whatever he does.
Because if we look back now, for the past month, it seems he was seemingly not on Russia's side and saying lots of rough things about Putin, and then he has this meeting where they're shaking hands, red carpet. They built like an Olympic-looking platform. The jets are flying over. 10 out of 10 meeting. Everything's wonderful. And I'm sure that what he was doing was basically lying to throw the press off and to throw Europe off. And I'm guessing that he felt he had to do this so that Europe and Ukraine would not try to do anything to sabotage the meeting. So what he did was he made them think that he was going into this meeting where he might be just really giving Russia a hard time. And so that caused them to let their guard down some. Am I correct, guys?
Well, I also think with regards to that as well, like I am starting to, I'm under the impression that he went into that meeting saying that he wants a peace deal just to get the dogs to stop yapping for a little bit, basically. But really, when I have a look at the lineup of people that were there, from what was it, the finance minister, the direct investment minister, or something like that from Russia, it's making me think, actually, was it about Ukraine? Because let's face it, it's too unrealistic. Why would anybody, like, Russia's already on the winning side and it's just heavily advancing, and sooner or later it's going to be able to take Odessa and have a land bridge all the way to Moldova. So why on earth would you stop there? Because the thing is, okay, if you stop now for a start, how stupid would you be to do that, firstly? Because the thing is, the British and the Europeans still have access to Odessa port. Why would you want to stop now? It's ridiculous. It makes zero sense to me. So I think even Trump and his team were thinking, we're not getting a deal out of that. But you know what would be good? If we could start maybe forming business relationships and being able to form infrastructure projects and things of this nature. And that's the thing. It's kind of like, because Europe at this point, I believe, is starting to become a heavy, greatly depreciating asset as it goes on. Because firstly, the leadership is batshit insane. There's no other way to say it, right? They are just nutters. So the thing is, at this point, it's kind of like, right, so they're a heavily depreciating asset. All of their stockpiles are getting burnt in Ukraine, so the Russians are all burning that. And also, there's been a lot happening in the financial world with regards to Jerome Powell, of course, moving from LIBOR, the London banking rate, all the way over to SOFR, and basically bringing their economy internal. And now they're basically, what you see happening is they're just draining the dollars out of Europe. And I even look back further. It's like, what has happened? I'm starting to see this whole thing play out, and I'm starting to entertain the idea. Now, it might be completely wrong, but I'm entertaining it. Is this actually starting to become Operation Drain Europe so it can't go batshit insane and start World War III? I'm starting to think that could be the case.
Well, I want to know what Stanislav Krapivnic thinks before we get too far away of the Odessa issue, because he's a military guy and he's from Russia. So what is the deal? I know Odessa's on Russia's heart, but I know that militarily it would be a tough grab, let's say. I'm not
maybe not, because you got to look at it this way. Russia, by the constitution, Russia has to get back into Kherson and take the rest of Kherson Oblast, which is on the other side of the Dnieper. But economically, Ukraine is a non-existent state because Russia sits on the Dnieper, and the Dnieper is like the Mississippi, right, or the Danube. Everything goes up and down that river that sustains the majority of Ukrainian industry, or what little is left. And trust me, there's a little left. I can tell you that as a first-hand witness to how they drained that economic swamp, if you want to call it that. But by the way, it just as a side note, Umirov, who's been Minister of Defense for 1 year, through his shell companies, just spent $10 million in Florida buying real estate for all his relatives. They're all under different shell companies. They just happen to have all the same PO box. And this is just one guy earning. This is just one guy that they've been able to track down what he's earning. In the Soprano style of earning. So Ukraine is screwed no matter what. But I'm thinking, and I voiced this on a couple of my podcasts and some interviews, and we'll see if it pans out. Okay, so van der Leyen, which is who I've been told through various very good sources, is looking for an escape chute to the U.S. because she kind of earned $1 billion a little questionably on vaccines, and there are it's gone past allegations, and there are legal movements against her and her husband. So she needs a place to go. And as the woman has said before, that I feel just as good in the U.S. as I do in Germany. From her meeting with Trump, from a certain eyewitness account, she was told, "You will sign whatever the hell we give you." And as you notice, when Trump was saying 750 billion euros in energy bought over 3 years, okay, everything's okay. Now, here's the problem. Here's the kicker. U.S. doesn't have 250 billion euros worth of energy to export to the U.S. per year. It physically doesn't have it. The maximum energy goods that the U.S. exported last year, and that was the highest ever, was $80 billion worth. So you got to find another 170 billion somewhere. But interestingly, within those 80 billion were a couple of purchases of tankers of Russian LNG that were then resold to Europe at a much marked up price. So effectively, Europe has said, okay, we won't buy anything Russian. We'll only buy from America. So here's a good deal. We go to Russia. We pay them 20% over market rate. We turn around, and Europe pays us 100% over market rate because Europe now has no choice because they've signed the deal, or we're going to squeeze them on the gonads really, really hard. And Ursula won't get her, her instant citizenship in the U.S. with her 1 billion euros. And all of a sudden, I think with the euros, when they signed that, most of the Euro leaders went, okay, 80 billion is the max they got. They ain't got enough. They don't have enough tankers. We don't need to worry about it. Okay, so we might have to buy another 10 billion off of them or something like that. They ain't got the capacity. Well, all of a sudden they get a lot closer to that capacity if they're going to Siberia, fueling up and coming back and dropping it on Europe at a much marked up rate. But I think there might have been some talks in that direction. That would have made that would be one of those surprises that at least a few Euro leaders, if they're man enough, they'll go take the cyanide route.
Okay,
but as far as Trump and just to finish, as far as Trump and Putin, I have it from very good sources who were witnesses to their previous meetings in the first round. They're like close relatives. They're like cousins. They're not like two businessmen or two politicians or even friends. They're on the level of like close relatives when they're talking, and nobody can figure this out. That there's just some kind of wavelength thing going on with them. So on top of that, in my personal opinion, they should have hugged. Then you could have heard the heads popping in Europe all the way in Moscow.
It feels right what you're saying.
Out there and a couple people and some other stuff in front of the journalists, and they all stood up and did a toast. There were mass suicide all over Europe.
What you're saying feels right, Stanislav. But what about Keith Kellogg? That whole, we've been dragged around by that for a couple of months, and Trump looking like he's Ukraine friendly. How do you answer that?
And you notice Kellogg wasn't at the meeting, and neither was Lady Graham. So
okay, so you think it was
all that says a lot right there.
Okay, all right. Well, audience, I'm going to do a few more questions, and then I'm going to look for your questions. So, guys, thanks for tuning in. Those who are watching, and make sure you get ready to do your questions in all caps and like 3 question marks. So it's easy for me to see amongst the comments. And I'll try to go back, but if you already left a question, once we're getting to question time, try and give it to me again if you can. But Krapivnic, I want to know, do you think the world is safer now? Do you think that Ukraine still might try to attack the nuclear triad again? Or What do you think?
So we've gone from Stan to Stanislav Krapivnic to Krapivnic. This is not a good kind of
Krapivnic's easier for me. This is my trick, guys. Don't remember first name.
So you know we're wrapping the conversation.
Family, that's one name for 5 people.
So in the end, we're going to just go back to K. I was Lieutenant K. I was Private K, Lieutenant K, Captain K. And by the way, Americans can pronounce Kirkpatrick, but they can't pronounce Krapivnic. I just, So, what do you mean is, what you're asking is if MI6, CIA, and Mossad are going to attack the Russian triad?
Are they going to try
absolutely.
that again? Are they going to do it again? Or are they thinking, it's over, we better back off?
Look, Mossad is bad enough. CIA, the Russian house and the CIA has been out of control since probably about the 1960s. There's no president that knows what the hell these people are doing. They're a force unto themselves. Eisenhower said that was the worst thing he ever did was sign the bill that created the CIA. They are an entity that is not under control of the U.S. government. Neither is the FBI for the most part. But they are the deep state, if you want to talk about deep state. They do what they want. They do it where they want it, and there's no oversight committees worth a damn. And when in the U.S. Congress, when they vote for their budgets, it's a black budget. It's the CIA and the volume. They have no idea what the hell the people are doing with this money. So since there's no control over them, if they see an opportunity, these guys, I'm sure they'll try to take it. There's no rational thought about where this could lead. Obviously, they've proven it. And for Ukraine, and Zelensky will sign off and do whatever he's told, partially because otherwise he'll die. And he's going to die in the end anyways. I mean, let's talk reality. The moment he leaves office, he's a loose end that knows way too much, and he will talk. The only way Zelensky sees old age, probably in a cell, is to go surrender to Russia or go run to Belarus. Any other direction, the man ain't reaching old age, not because of his drug use. So there's that moment. Yeah, the only way, and the Ukrainians, I am sure they've got some reserves left that they've been husbanding, and I've got a feeling they'll try to throw something, at least for the headlines, into Bryansk Oblast, or maybe northern Kursk Oblast, which works for us, because that pulls their reserves from the deep rear and puts them into a place where they can be destroyed without having to go hunt for them. So, sure, okay. It sucks for any civilians that are stuck in the areas, because these guys have shown how bloodthirsty maniacs they are, and they butchered women and children with no problems. And there's lots of documented proof. The people that didn't leave in time or were cut off. But yeah, that's why they weren't taking very many prisoners in Kursk when they were being routed. The Russian side wasn't taking very many prisoners. So Philip, yeah, they'll try something.
Philip, Stanislav is saying that Zelensky is not his own boss and he's not going to last. You said you've advised several prime ministers. Did you ever get an idea from your position? Is the UK pulling the strings on Ukraine? Do you personally know or not? Because we're all kind of taking guesses here.
Yeah, so when I was in the room, it was a case of pulling most of those strings. I mean, Boris Johnson had an extremely cozy relationship with Zelensky. Everyone knows that. Like he was visiting there all the time. He pretty much went there even when he didn't have to go there. He was very much aligning himself, and that was a personal choice, by the way. I mean, that wasn't even the party saying he had to do that. He somehow, decided, like, I want to get really, really friendly and cozy with the Ukrainian side of things. Now, I mean, you say about him not being his own boss. I mean, yes, he is pretty much a puppet for Europe, doing whatever they want. Of course he is, because think about it for a minute. If he hasn't got that support of Europe, he doesn't have the funding that he's obviously getting, and we all know where that money's ending up. And also what's left, like he hasn't got the ability to fight anyone without the support of Europe or the backing of Europe. So if he doesn't do what they want and they pull out or retract from their military aid, financial aid, support for Ukraine, they haven't got anything left. So when you're a country like that, of course, you are going to do what you're told. Now, I think he will try and be on his best behavior in Washington. I know that a lot of the European partners that are going to be there will be pulling a lot of those strings. And if they're sensible, they'll be going into the meeting sort of knowing what they want. He will have a private meeting with the president and probably the vice president prior to the other leaders coming into the room. But things will generally be discussed before the meeting. You never go into a meeting completely blind. You'll have advisors on the Ukrainian side. You'll have advisors on the European side. Keir Starmer will have a room full of people. They would have been speaking, directly to the White House team, State Department, quite a lot of other departments in the United States to sort of align kind of where we're at, and they'll put a sort of shell deal together, if you like, prior to going there. Now, obviously, when you're actually live on TV, you can then go against that, or as a president, you can have your outburst or say the wrong thing or whatever. That could happen, and then you can piss the other side off and completely end the meeting, and both sides walk away without a deal. But I think at the moment there is going to be so much pressure there on every side to get something done. I can't really see a situation where like some kind of deal or some kind of agreement doesn't happen. It's quite interesting, obviously, what we're hearing now, off the back of the meeting in Alaska, that a ceasefire arrangement isn't going to be on the table now. It is sort of moving straight to that peace agreement. I don't know what's actually gone on in the room when it comes to Sir Keir Starmer and his advisors today, because obviously I'm not there anymore. I'm not really involved in it anymore at all, and it's a completely different party from the party I was aligned with. However, there is definitely going to be a case of those advisors telling the Prime Minister that we have to align more towards what Trump is saying. I mean, that relationship, don't forget, between the United States and the UK is key. I mean, they're the closest ally between each other. And even though, they've had their disagreements and Keir Starmer has aligned very much more with Europe, let's not forget that special relationship that each of them have. Obviously Trump has visited the UK recently. There's going to be the unprecedented second state visit in his second term, which obviously he was invited to from Keir Starmer's last trip to the White House. So there is that special relationship to maintain, and I don't think any UK Prime Minister will veer too much aside from that, because they are also very much influenced by what the US is doing, regardless of by what relationship Macron and others have with that Prime Minister. Do you
think that Zelensky's trying to turn the European Union against Trump?
Oh, of course. I mean, you can see that. You can see that all the time. You can see that with what he says in the media, his outbursts everywhere, his constant networking. I mean, he's a networking wizard. I mean, he's like every other day, he's like meeting some other European president or prime minister, trying to, be their best friends and try and ensure that funding continues and that support continues. And it's like whenever he's got some other meeting, he had that meeting that went bad in Washington. The next day he was in number 10, hugging Keir Starmer. He comes crying to Keir Starmer after a bad meeting. He comes crying to Keir Starmer before he's got a big meeting that he needs to attend. He's not a president. He's he's in place at the moment, being bossed about, doing what he's told, meeting a load of people, not making his own decisions. It's going to be very interesting to watch tomorrow for sure.
And James, you already mentioned you think there's a lot of corruption in the EU and in the UK. You think that?
Well, of course there is, yeah, and I think that's kind of the thing. The thing is, the way that I kind of see it, my general framework for Europe, it's not really run by politicians. It's run by financiers, globalists, Davos, and these kind of characters. I mean, pick a name and that's your enemy, basically, like it, them, as they say, right? And that's kind of the thing. I do want to come back to the meetings when it comes to, say, the Alaska summit and where it's going to most likely go from here, just in my general mind. Now, I think there are two things. The first thing is actually that, of course, we have to just go back a bit in time and just see what Trump's already done with regards to Europe. Now, the thing is, the last time that he was in Europe, he went to Trump Castle in Scotland. I call it Trump Castle because that's what it is. He then summoned Ursula von der Satan as well as Keir Starmer. And he made sure that they get over to the castle. And he also escorted...
Keir Starmer. Let's not get me in trouble with the algorithm here.
Well, all right.
Never hear Starmer.
Okay. Yeah, I couldn't help it.
You just said it wrong. I knew it was just a slip of the tongue.
It's
you're coughing on something.
It's a speech impediment, is what anyway.
You're British. Well, it happens.
So anyway, he also escorted Starmer he also escorted him to Scotland to his castle. So he summoned the European leader there almost at the click of a finger to his place of leisure, and he brought them on his US helicopter, which is hilarious for a start. And what deal did they get? Well, firstly, the Europeans, they've got to pay 15%. The Brits have to pay 10% on the tariffs, and they have to buy everything from America, like Stanislav was saying, right? So the thing is, now Trump's kind of put them in a position where he's almost got them by the, what's the polite word? The tennis balls. He's got them by the tennis balls, right? Because now, if things go wrong in the White House tomorrow, well, what can he do? Well, they're being unreasonable. How about 30%? How about 30% for all of you? And how about we double the price of the LNG? How is that? Would you like that? It's at this point. And also, we need to also look at some other things, right? Because there have been, I don't know if you've been following the Obama stuff recently with the election rigging, the Obama files and all that. Well, it turns out that these Dominion voting systems from 2020, a lot of that information was actually funneled through Brussels and through Italy, right? A lot of the data all went through there. So the thing is now, all of this stuff, like, has of course come out, like with Trump and his team and all that sort of stuff. So I'm just under the impression that the only way he got them to agree to those tariffs in the first place was he got them into Trump Castle, he got them around the table, and he said, you see these files? You're going to go to prison for a long time, von der Satan. And before you know it, she comes out looking like a hostage. She comes out looking like a hostage and going, yes, we love the 15% tariffs. Yes, well, it was like that, basically. So I do think that that's what's going to happen. They are going to grovel at the White House and say, we will do whatever you want. And that's the way that it's going to go, because they're already circling the drain of irrelevancy as it is due to their own corruption and due to election interference in the United States. So I think the way that it's going to go, Trump has all the cards on this one, to be honest, as well as the Alaska meeting, because Putin has been more than reasonable with what he said. What he said, look, on these conditions, we may have a deal. So if he puts it to them and they say no, there are a lot of cogs that Trump can turn at this point in time to make them say yes. You know what I mean? So right. he's kind of got them by the tennis balls.
Well, on this subject of European corruption, one of my subscribers sent this message to me privately, and I want one of you three to tell me what it means. It says, the Minister of Foreign Affairs of Norway, now former, Anniken Huitfeldt, leaked information to her husband about companies participating in supplies for the Ukrainian armed forces at the expense of the Norwegian budget, and he used this to play on the stock exchange. So, pretty crazy stuff.
Yeah, I mean, it happens. It happens. I mean, there's a lot of information you can use, like whatever politician you are, even advisors for. I mean, there's certain information that you'd have access to on a regular basis that if you really wanted to, you could play a lot of stock markets to your advantage with, knowing what's going to happen tomorrow or next week or next month. But it happens in every country. There's corruption in every country in the world. People say there's not. I mean, the UK, I've seen it time and time again. I mean, James will know, even not working in politics, you can just see the corruption that the UK has.
And Philip, just sorry to interrupt. I was actually involved in UKIP during Brexit, so I was out there.
Oh, sorry.
No, it's okay. You didn't know, but I actually ran for the local elections back in 2016, but we kind of got Brexit.
Did we lose me or James? Okay, I see Krapivnic.
No, but I will tell you.
Hey, it looks like we lost the Brits. All right, man. High five. Can you hear me?
Well, I see him. Wait a minute. What do you mean? I see him. Yeah, I'm listening to them.
But they're frozen.
What? Can you hear me?
No. Our British brethren are speaking, and you're not seeing them. I'm seeing them. I'm listening. I'm getting entertained.
I talked over you. Okay.
So anyway, I'm just going to let something out now. I can tell you about the count that day. Now I'm from Wolverhampton, right? And we're just during the local elections. Okay. Now let me just tell you this: when I ran for local elections in Wolverhampton. Now I was running for an East Park ward in 2016. We went over to Aldersley Sports Hall to go and do the counts and all that sort of stuff. And a lot of us had our rosettes on, like our UKIP rosettes, going in. And I tell you, at those counts, you could see that there was some, let's say, dirty actions going on. Like, for instance, you had some of the Labour lot, trying to nudge people and causing some havoc. But the most interesting thing was, now I beat pretty much everyone apart from the Labour Party. Weird. But anyway, and do you know who I lost to? Which now you might think second. Well done, mate. You are brilliant. Okay. Now I actually lost the election to somebody who how do I say this politely? Somebody who is in the wrong body. That of course was actually in the military for a very long time, but now dresses differently. So yes, I lost the election to them, and I was like, how does this make any sense? And anyway, the leader of our local ward, he basically said, James, you'll learn something now. You could flog a dead horse in Wolverhampton and it's going to come out Labour, and there's nothing you can do about it. And then all of a sudden I realised, this is futile. What am I doing? So anyway, back over to Philip. Sorry for interrupting.
So wait a minute. You're saying that was a trans testicle?
Something of the sort.
Careful, gentlemen, careful.
Something of the sort.
Philip, did you have a thought you wanted to finish?
No, I mean, I think I was pretty much on that.
Well, Krapivnic, did you want to say something about the statement I read that the subscriber sent me? Or
we're just saying corruption, weren't we? And then James obviously mentioned about corruption within elections, and of course, those counts he's talking about, because you literally have many guys in there watching like a hawk as to what is being counted, what votes are being put into what basket. And if you're not careful, you might sort of miss it, or miss something going into the wrong basket with them. There's a lot of, like you say, there's a lot of games with that sort of thing in terms of, you didn't quite see that one, and what slipped into that basket, And so it happens. But like I say, there's corruption in terms of voting and elections. There's corruption in terms of expenses and what's been spent where, and what contractors are working on what government projects, and who's winning what bids, and obviously COVID. Let's not even go there. but having COVID, that billions went into black holes all over the world. I mean, I was speaking to Matt Hancock, who I quite know, over the last sort of few months or so, and it's unbelievable. I mean, looking at hearing some of the stories about the kind of money, and we're talking billions of dollars that were just sent to shell companies in random countries, in Cayman Islands and all sorts. Now, this is a government, right? A government is not checking where billions of dollars are going to random offshore accounts in the Cayman Islands. Like, you can't even make this stuff up. Like, how can a government function? And I mean, obviously, the whole Doge thing and what Trump's doing in the US. Every country needs to do that. Every country needs to look at their books, because I'm pretty sure, like, you're going to find so much money that's just going into complete nonsense, like complete nonsense. And it would be so easy to clear that up. But governments don't want to, because most of the people are in on it in some way or the other.
Philip, I don't know if you've seen it, but there's a very good documentary called The Spider's Web. It's free on YouTube, and it goes on about this idea that when the British Empire, quote unquote, collapsed, it never collapsed, it just changed. So they sent loads of diplomats and whatnot out to the Cayman Islands, to Gibraltar, you name it, all of these different overseas territories that we have, to basically set them up to be money laundering operations. And to this day, it turns out that the City of London is laundering the majority of the world's money. But it's just because it's done through a corporation and not through the country. It's under a different jurisdiction entirely. Wow. So, there's a reason why HSBC and all the headquarters set up in that square mile, right? Like that, there's a reason for that. And it's an
Stanislav, you wanted to say something?
Yeah. Nancy Pelosi.
Well, that's another.
Well, who was her husband? Who is her husband? One of the biggest investor bankers in the U.S. Nancy Pelosi.
She's traded over the last few years.
I'm sure they never discussed anything again other than the Fight Club. The first rule of Fight Club: you don't talk about Fight Club. The other thing, Russia has declared war for America and Britain, particularly to New York City and London City, because starting very soon in St. Petersburg, the Russian gold exchange opens up. So we're going to start discovering what the real value of gold is. And I tell you, it's not $3,000 an ounce. Now, in 1971, it was about $36.80 cents an ounce until Nixon released it, and it almost doubled within a year. But right now, it's not $3,000 an ounce. I would say maybe 5.5, 6 is a good guess. Maybe some people are saying up to 10. So next half a year is going to be very, very, very interesting for New York and for London City and for a lot of people in general, because we're going to see what those currencies are really valued at, which I'd say somewhere south of
Okay, guys, I was hoping to give 30 minutes to the audience, but there's a few things I want to run through real quick. So I have a broad question for all three of you. Any one of you can answer. How important do we think Trump's meeting is with Zelensky tomorrow?
I think this is going to confirm what we already think, if I'm honest. Like, I'm sorry, these guys are predictable. That's
how important for whom? Trump or Zelensky?
The world, normal people. Yeah, that's a good question.
World's a vampire. We'll see. I've got plenty of popcorn. I'll buy some more and some Scottish whiskey with my little granite stones. I'll be watching it.
So what you're saying is you guys aren't hopeful, but if something good could happen, how much potential is there in this meeting?
I think there's a lot of potential. I mean, don't forget there was almost a deal previously, and we all know how much Trump loves his rare earths that he's trying to get out of Ukraine. And I think he's had those same conversations with Putin about Russia. And I think there's a lot of sort of business things that he's envisioning from both countries. There's going to be a huge push to get to an agreement one way or the other, and I don't think they're going to look at walking away from it lightly, given everything that's happened in the last 48 hours. I don't think it's going to be a blow up when nothing happens. That's my personal opinion. It could do, but I think there's going to be some kind of resolution, and I think it's going to be quite an intense exchange. But I personally think something good's going to come out of it.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. You know, the problem with the rare earths, one, they're not that rare. And the U.S. has tons of rare earths, especially in the coal tailings. The problem with the rare earths is processing the rare earths. It's not getting the ore. Russia has some processing capabilities, maybe like 3, 4, 5%. A lot of it from even the Soviet Union times. China has about 80% of global processing for rare earths. So, like it or not, no matter where you get the mines, in the end, you may talk to Russia, but you're still going to be talking to China at the end. And it's multi-billion-dollar investment. It's going to take you at least a half a year to a year to set it up, if not longer. It's dirty, and most states will fight it. So it puts the U.S. in a really bad spot. But you need them. You need the magnets.
All right. Well, audience, I'm going to start looking for your questions now. Again, all caps if you can, and like 3 question marks to help me see it. So start typing that, and I'll give you guys one last question for me. On the conflict, how will it end? When will it end? What are your predictions?
Okay. All right. I'll say it quick. And I've been asked this question a bunch of times, for obvious reasons. And, how far will Russia go? I said, I don't know, London. People go, okay, maybe Paris. Like, look, Russia will keep moving forward until it reaches a group of people that don't want to shoot. Because think of it this way. The territories, say, in Kharkiv, they become part of Russia. Who do those people become? They become Russian citizens. If they're still being shelled from Western Kharkiv or Poltava, what does Russia have to do? It has to defend those people. Moves the border further. Those people become Russian citizens. If they're being shelled from Kiev Oblast or Chernigov or wherever from across the border, the Dnieper, Russia goes after that because it has to defend the people that now it's within its borders. And it's going to continue doing that until it reaches somebody that says, okay, we don't want to shoot. Let's have peace. Whether that's Kiev, whether that's Lvov, whether it's Warsaw, whether it's Berlin for a fourth time in 300 years. We'll see.
Okay. All right. Well, first question. What do you think, gentlemen? What are your predictions? Will Zelensky remember to wear a suit?
Absolutely not.
A bunny suit.
Look, he doesn't own a suit, right? Well, firstly, he's going to have to go to H&M or somewhere and go and buy one because he does. Like, imagine he's just got this entire wardrobe and it's just green T-shirts all the way across.
Let's get some black ones. He's got some black ones now.
He has. Yeah, he's been diversifying the young man.
Yeah, when he was a comedian, he was wearing some black suits and some bow ties. I know he definitely owned some from back in those days.
Look, when you're crack stoned out of your mind every day, the last thing you want to do is waste time worrying about what goes with what. You wear the same crap, and you don't notice the snort marks on there from it. It washes really well.
All right, guys, thanks for sending in the questions. I'm going to start putting them up. And again, audience, if you sent me a question like 40 minutes ago, send it again. All right, here's the next one. Why is Trump needing to check with an illegal former president of Ukraine who answers to whom? Now, I know we can all say this in a negative way, but logically, realistically, how would you argue the case that Trump should meet with him?
I think it's optics on this one. It is just optics because the thing is, if you want to create an off-ramp, well, firstly, you have to make this appearance that something has happened. So X will happen, X happens, and then you can basically go like that and say, well, they were being unreasonable, so now I can do X. And you saw that I did the thing, right? So I think it's basically Hollywood. It's optics, if anything, personally. But there you go.
Yeah, I mean, the other thing as well, don't forget Europe was upset that Zelensky wasn't invited to the summit in Alaska. They didn't want that to go ahead with Zelensky. It did. I think if some sort of backroom deal was done without having any meeting, you definitely wouldn't get the support of Europe at all. So, like you say, James, it is more optics to please Europe more than anything.
Yeah.
All right. Now, how about this? Wouldn't eliminating Zelensky help bring this war to an end sooner? Without Churchill 2.0, Europe couldn't funnel cash to Ukraine and back to the globalist. Is that argument way off? So help the audience out with this one, guys.
Well, first of all, whether they put Zelensky in, whether they put Poroshenko back in or Tymoshenko, they're going to funnel money because there isn't a single honest crook in Ukraine left alive. We're still in Ukraine. So, yeah, the money will funnel. I mean, we're talking billions upon billions of dollars. As far as from the Russian side, why get rid of Zelensky? He's an idiot that finally gets under people's nerves. It's taken a while, but he's doing it. God forbid somebody competent might come take his place. No, he's dealing with a clown that you know, by the way, may still be a Russian citizen. In which case, because he used to have a Russian citizen, in which case he's also a traitor.
Yeah, I heard that he was near the front line like 6 months ago, or something like that, and Russia was like, whoa, pull back, stop firing. Like they did not want him accidentally deleted because they want him in charge. And if he is just a hired actor, if he is just answering to the UK, then it doesn't matter if he is eliminated because they're just going to get somebody else.
Exactly.
They're going to hire Ryan Reynolds or somebody.
Yeah, I mean, it's not a decapitation strike. You're cutting off just the leg. You're cutting off just a branch of this bigger tree, right? You're not actually cutting it at the stump when you get rid of him. So just on sheer effectiveness, you haven't really done much, right?
Right.
Because
he's not Sauron, right?
Yeah. So of course, since of course,
seriously.
Yeah, of course. But that's the thing. Like since Maidan, right? They've built all of these different systems and payment mechanisms and money laundering operations there, right? You've got to basically unravel that. You've got to actually destroy the system if you want to decapitate. Because taking him out is nothing but taking a branch off a tree. So it might make people clap, but it won't change a damn thing.
Yep. Very true.
So Christy wants to know, what are President Putin's terms for peace? So how can you guys explain this to the audience or to laymen that want to know, like in general, what does Putin want here?
Bubble gum, Kinder eggs, I don't know, kiss on the cheek, denazification, which is rampant in Ukraine, elections, honest elections, defense of the Russian language, defense of the Russians living there that haven't been terminated by the Ukrainians, defense of the Church of the Moscow Patriarchy, which, by the way, canonically Ukraine is part of that church territory, and canonical territories do not change, regardless of what's on the ground. And let's keep NATO and everybody else out of Ukraine. So basically, Germany 1921, very small defense force, no alliances and nobody else in there, and no weapons of mass destruction. Anybody's weapons of mass destruction.
And also Donetsk has come up over the last sort of 24 hours quite a lot, that potentially that's going to be where he tries to sort of secure it, where, look, if we can all agree that Donetsk is now Russian, some of the other territory claims may be relaxed a little bit. I'm not sure for sure, but I know a lot of media outlets have picked up on that over the last sort of 24 hours.
Well, Putin cannot release any of the territory or give away any of the territory in Zaporozhye or in Kherson in their original borders. That is now part of they have the referendums. They're part of the Russian territory, and it is against the Russian constitution to infringe on any 1 square centimeter of Russian land. So he would be impeached, quite literally. He'd be up for impeachment, and he's not a dictator. He doesn't have 100% power. So no, that is against the constitution. Now, the territory that's in Dnepropetrovsk, Kharkov, and Sumy Oblast, yeah, that can be traded away for them leaving in those other areas, or they'll get forced out one way or the other. So I think they should keep on fighting, because the military end is going to be the only one to make sure it's peace. Look, one of the reasons this war is going so slowly, very simply put, one of the American plans was, if we can get Russia to march in real quick, it all falls into Russian hands, and then we're going to have a good guerrilla war for the next 10, 15 years, and we're just going to bleed Russia. Well, Ukraine suffered, like I said, somewhere between 1.5 to 2.5 million dead, as many invalids. I mean, these aren't just wounded; these are invalids, missing legs, arms, heads, and some of those people will live without a head. They've seen to prove that. But so the people, everybody else has ran away or is hiding. So the people that would have done the partisan war are mostly dead now, or they're hopping around on stilts. They're not going to go for climb over fences and blow things up. So you've taken now, over 3 years, you've eliminated that very class that would have ran that guerrilla war. They're gone. And the people that are left are going to be thanking God they're not dead or not like the others. And they don't want to fight. So this is going to be Germany 1945, where the werewolves didn't materialize. And the 1-2 times they did materialize, and the whole village got wiped, once by American forces, once by Red Army forces. Then everybody else said, no, this is over. War's over. We don't want to fight. Thank you very much. We're going to go home now. And that's the same thing here.
Well, yeah, there's just one point on that, Stanislav, because it's one thing we keep hearing about. Just to go back to one of your points with regards to this constitution. Well, any constitution is only as good as your ability to fight for it, right? It's only as good as you being able to defend it. There is no word you can use, no constitution. Oh, in my constitution it says this. Well, defend it then, because otherwise it's not worth the paper it's written on, is it? So at the end of the day, it's like, well, he can yap all he likes, same as Ursula von der Leyen and same as the rest of them, right? But it's like, are you going to fight for it, though? Because at the end of the day, we're not living in a consensus-driven world anymore. That old world order's over. We're back to might makes right. And your ability to defend something is the only thing that matters, your ability to use force. And if the other force is stronger than you and crushes you, then you can screw your constitution. It doesn't matter at the end of the day, Yep. So
I would argue we never left Mike makes right, because if you look at it realistically, especially just over the last 30 years, sure, we had the NATO group, we had this, whatever. Okay, today we'll blow up Libya, tomorrow we'll blow up Somalia, this day we'll blow up Afghanistan, then Iraq, then Yugoslavia, and blah, blah, blah. And it's just been nonstop. U.S. hasn't had a day of peace in the last 30 years.
Yeah.
35 years.
All right, the next question I have was sent to me on another device. This is specifically for Philip. So it says, recently the opinion has been increasingly appearing on the internet that Ukrainians are literally spreading the virus of corruption throughout the EU. How would you comment on this, Philip? As a former EU politician or UK politician, you are probably aware of such precedences. Maybe you have heard something from your colleagues on this matter.
Okay, so Ukraine spreading corruption throughout Europe.
Yeah, I guess the idea is that Ukraine is so corrupt, and they've been like exporting this idea, and it's just leaking everywhere, and now it's just made the EU just corrupt.
Yeah, I mean, I think corruption was long before Ukraine. I don't think it's going to be off off the back of that? Has it made it worse? Maybe. I know there's obviously a lot of people. When we talk about Ukraine making a lot of money and siphoning money off, you think we're just talking about Ukraine. I mean, look at the amount of money that's been made from pretty much every European country on this. UK, even the US. I mean, all of these military contracts and funding that's sent to Ukraine and weapons and military and everything else that's sent into Ukraine. There's a whole sort of chain that goes back to different companies, different directors, different places around the world that money gets sent. So there's a lot of politicians, not just Ukrainian ones, making a lot of money off this war, which is why I don't think that the EU or Europe really wants it to end, because there's a lot of people making money in terms of all of those countries put together, really. Like I say, it's not that corruption wasn't there before, but of course a lot of people are milking this war, and it isn't for some people's interest to have it end.
So then my question to you would be, based on your experience doing political work in the UK, UK, EU, Ukraine, which one's more corrupt? Do you have a pulse on that? And which one's the least corrupt, perhaps?
Well, I would say right now it definitely is Ukraine, for sure. And I only say that from what I've seen with my own eyes. Living in the UAE, seeing those kinds of funds from Ukrainians, that I can tell you, they did not have almost a pot to piss in before this war existed in that region. And we're seeing people come over that you're just like, this is blatant money laundering from the British taxpayers, and you could see it time and time again. And I was sat in a meeting with government ministers, and I've said to them, and this is part of why I was cancelled in the UK when it comes to politics. I was pretty much kicked out of the Conservative Party, because I literally sat down with ministers and said, why are we not doing checks and balances, the correct checks and balances on money that is going out the country? Because we're pretty much giving them blank checks. It's not like we're just giving weapons or resources or medical aid or whatever else. We're literally giving them blank checks. We're giving them money. And when you do that, you just get into a situation where we're not monitoring it. We need, if you want to help a country or help anyone, I mean, first of all, help your own country. I mean, that's a whole other subject, right? Homelessness is rife. We've got our own issues in our own country, and we're committing 100 billion plus to Ukraine, billions a year for the next 100 years, which is absolutely absurd. But if you want to do that and decide to do that, at least keep a proper P&L of actually what is coming and going, because I don't think anyone can tell you what's been spent on this war and how much money's been spent. James, do you have something to interject?
But you know what? That's what I think. Maybe that's the point. They don't want to keep a P&L on this sort of stuff, because if that lid's got blown, then before you know it, they could be behind bars. The quieter they can keep this money laundering operation, because, even the vocab that they use, money to Ukraine, I try to use different vocab and say, no, it's money to a money laundering operation that happens to be in Ukraine, because it's a great funnel to use to make sure that it can come back to yourself and you can have a healthy retirement in God knows where, right? So I think that's what's going on. And plus, with regards to charities that have been set up in the UK, now there are all sorts of tax advantages to setting up a charity in the UK too. So a lot of them say, give to Ukraine, £2 a month, be a lovely chap. And, they go into the news headlines, the Express and Star, the Times, the Guardian. Oh, look at how great this charity are. All they're getting is good publicity for money laundering. It's unreal. So I think there's a lot of that going on. So imagine getting praised for money laundering. It's like, but that's the world we're living in. Anyway, I'm rambling.
Wow. So on that point,
go ahead.
Get your points in. We're probably going to wrap it up in 10 minutes. So go ahead.
I was just saying
between Iraq and Afghanistan, the low ball of what was spent is $5 trillion. The high ball is $14 trillion. Most experts are looking at about $7 to $8 trillion that went into those two wars. You really think they were just going to pay for equipment and for war fighting? Corporations like Halliburton, when they owned Kellogg Brown and Root, were charging $80 per liter of water to the U.S. military. They're driving down to Kuwait, buying diesel at about 18 cents a liter and reselling it up to the U.S. military for about $100. I mean, this is corruption on a level that the average person can't even fathom. I mean, the mid-ball is $7 to $8 trillion. So when those two wars close, you got to have another one. You can't stop the gravy train. There's new senators coming in. There's new representatives coming. They need to earn too, God damn it. And the next president has people backing him. They've got. Why I'm a monarchist, by the way. I am a constitutional monarchist. Because every damn president you elect, every prime minister you elect, every chancellor you elect wants to earn, and the people behind him that push him through want to earn. It's their turn, baby. Soprano style. Need a war. You always need a war.
It's very sad. All right. Well, one other idea, Philip, you said you think Ukraine probably is more corrupt, but as far as the EU is concerned, von der Leyen, she just got caught up in a scandal over the vaccine. So I guess you think it'd be Ukraine and then the EU in terms of corruption levels? Or?
When I say that Ukraine, I mean, if you're talking specifically about this war and this topic, you know, who's corrupt? Yeah, potentially Ukraine, but then again, I mean, it could be the UK. I mean, who knows where this money is going? And in the supply chain, you know, there's probably a lot of resources and money that goes missing elsewhere, and British politicians that have something to do with it. But if you're talking about as a whole, I mean, if you look at COVID, I mean, the corruption in COVID was probably 1,000x what the corruption of the war. And yeah, there's a lot of people that have been caught up with vaccines, ventilators, N95 masks, nitrile gloves, all of these fishy deals that were done. And yes, a lot of people made billions of dollars for selling crap from fake factories in Guangzhou. And you know, nothing's been done about that. No, people.
You know what?
All right.
Really funny. I'm sorry. I just want to
please.
This COVID point, because I was living there actually. I was living in the UK back when that kicked off, right? And I remember
it. Just say the vaccine times. We don't need to say the other word.
Okay, so the clock shot, right? Okay. So anyway, point being, right, I was living there at the time. Now, bearing in mind, now I don't know how it is where Philip is actually, but just put it this way: I'm from Wolverhampton, and you've got to wipe your feet walking out of the place. Sometimes it's ridiculous, right? There's been no new infrastructure since the 1970s. My water bill at Severn Trent Water was about 37 quid a month, right? And they even have hose pipe bans. Wettest country in Europe has hose pipe bans, right? Because they can't build a bloody dam, and they haven't built one since like the 70s. So imagine you are not allowed to use a hose pipe when it's mild. You can't do it, right? And your neighbours are told to snitch on you to make sure that, you know, you don't go watering your plants, Margaret. So anyway, point being, like, we've got no new infrastructure being built. And I thought, maybe that's just the way of the world. And then COVID happens. And guess what? In terms of, like, you know, as soon as Operation Warp Speed started over where you were, Stanislav. So, of course, I had the same thing with AstraZeneca and all this. And they were just blasting these vaccines out, got all of these, like, this new infrastructure up, like, within days. It happened within days, right? And I was like, so that's how it works. So basically, for anything you actually need in the UK, oh no, that'll take 20 years to build. We might as well not even think about it, right? You know, energy generation, forget about it. But in terms of, you know, all of this, yeah, we can get this done in days, no problem. And that's when I realised I can't take this country seriously anymore. I don't want to be here. I don't want to pay taxes for that. So, yeah, anyway.
It's crazy observation. Thanks for sharing that, James. So the next question on screen, we're going to leave out the word that's in parentheses because the algorithm doesn't want to think that we might be judging people on immutable characteristics. But is Russia under attack because it is a Christian, predominantly European, and not woke liberal place? I guess.
Well, I have a story, and this will illustrate everything. So in 2001, I'm sorry, right before 9/11, I was sent to the German infantry school along with another contingent of American soldiers. So it's 3 of us officers. I was the second in charge, and a bunch of sergeants and privates. And we went to the German infantry school for about a month as an exchange program. And I speak German. I used to speak a lot better German, and when I've got a couple of liters of beer in me, I speak much better German.
Nice.
So just happens that way, I guess. And I knew that sooner or later these guys are going to figure out I'm not an American, I'm a Russian. And I was like, I wondered. I'd been stationed in Germany, but it was in a U.S. military unit. Now I'm in a German infantry school. I know there's German nationalists running around in the German army. And sooner or later they're going to figure this out. And there was this one senior sergeant there who was an ultra German nationalist. And when he found out I was Russian, you know what his reaction was? Brother! At that point, after we drank a hell of a lot more beer together, and it'd be up in the morning at 6 a.m. information. But at that point, you start to realize the German nationalists, and that's not a small group of people, are looking up to Russia. This is 2001, are looking up to Russia. And why? I mean, Russia's economy was still struggling. It's 2001. Russia wasn't particularly directly under attack, but what the problem was Russia was a sovereign nation, and they all despise Brussels. They all despise the EU. They don't want to be part of the EU. They never want to be part of the EU. Nobody bothered to ask them about that. And I've ran into that in France. I've ran into that in Italy. And you understand really quickly, 2001, understand this war is going to come. Europe is going to fight Russia for one reason. The European elites cannot have Russia on their doorstep. It's too big, it's too sovereign, and they can't control it, and they can't suck it into the EU because it'll dominate the EU flat out. It's the biggest economy in Europe. It's the biggest population center in Europe, and it's the hardest entity to break. They can't digest it. They can't have it because all the nationalists all over Europe are looking at Russia going, yeah, we want to be sovereign too. So it's an inevitable clash.
Yeah, there's just one thing that I would add. I think that's one aspect, but I think it's one piece of the puzzle. I think there's also the fact that Europe has no good, high-quality collateral. So in terms of their resources, they've got some resources in some areas, right? But, I think what they want is Russia back to a state that it was in the 1990s under Yeltsin. I don't think this is convenient, since, of course, as soon as Putin came into power, he kicked all of that class of people out that were basically strip mining the country for pennies on the dollar. Right. So I think that's the problem that Europe's had. So, of course, it's had all of these, it's had all of these wars in the Middle East. And, of course, it's starting to run out of high quality collateral and it doesn't have its own. So you've got two choices economically. You either strip mine your own nations for all the wealth that they're worth, or you start finding a war to win against Russia. That's one of the most resource rich places on the planet with, I think, 25% of all the oil and gas in the world. So, I mean, this place would keep that whole regime running for at least 100 years. So that's kind of the thing. Again, they have nowhere else to leech off. They tried it in China, and even the Chinese said no. They've tried it with Russia. Russia said no under Putin. And maybe it could just be the case that Putin has said, hey, this is how you deal with these folks, right? Like to Trump. So Trump could be the next one that's saying, yeah, we're going to close our doors on you because, why does America even need war with Russia? It has its own resources. The only people here that don't have high quality collateral is Europe. Everybody else has it. But they're not willing to pay top price for it. It would be much better, just like they've been doing for hundreds of years, to swoop in, destroy the country and strip mine the heck out of it to make their continent look pretty. And that's what's going on.
Yep.
Okay. All right, guys. Well, I want us to end it now because more people will see this, I think, if it's 90 minutes or under. And there are more questions I haven't gotten to. And guys, I'm sorry for not getting to the questions. Yeah, I'll let you comment. But this was a very popular stream, and maybe we'll do something like this next week or in the future, depending upon how politics is going. Stanislav Krapivnic, you want to say something?
Yeah, and this is to Philip, and I have a question, and it's probably a long question. So if it's too long to answer here, I'd love to have you on my podcast and answer it for me.
Yeah. Well, let's do an abbreviated version of it, and then we'll you guys can.
The question is simple, because from the Russian side, it makes absolutely no sense. The overarching hatred from the British elite toward Russia. Because if you, and this is something, the 300-year great game, which Russia never played. If you look at the archives that have opened up from Imperial Russia, Russia didn't even know there was a great game going on. There's never any interest in India. There's never any interest in Afghanistan other than secure the border from slavery. That's why Russia went into Uzbekistan and Khiva. And if you think about it, strategically speaking, Russia and Britain are at either end of Europe. They would be natural allies. As the two outcasts, Russia's a land power, Britain is a sea power. They don't compete with each other in either of those. You would think they'd make natural allies, but 300 years, it's been, hatred. Mostly one-sided for whatever reason, but hatred and conflict.
Yeah, I mean, it has. I mean, it's obviously, there could be a much bigger answer to this. But in general, look, yes, it's been a bumpy ride over the years. There's a lot of things we've shared, of course, culturally, with education, with our royal families, etc. There's been a lot of linkage there with heritage and history, etc. over many, many years. But obviously, it's been bumpy with wars and hatred and things as well. I agree. I think that we need to align ourselves more with Russia. I think there's certain parties in the UK. I mean, James mentioned UKIP. I think there is another party in the UK potentially that's going to be better than the two other options there, potentially under Nigel Farage, maybe under someone else. Who knows? I think that's the way things are going to go. I mean, we had George Galloway came to Russia the other day and was telling everyone about when he's prime minister. Think things will be more aligned and more there. Now, I don't think George Galloway's it. I think he's totally the wrong views. But I think somebody like Nigel and those views are a bit more the conservative views, but views that are a bit more sensible in terms of how we should be running the world. And like I say, there's a lot more I could go into this and elaborate on it. My simple answer is yes. I think there is more that the UK government should do, but I don't think that I know for a fact that the Conservatives and the Labour Party are not the option, and it's never going to happen under those two until someone else comes in, possibly Nigel or maybe someone else.
Very good. All right, guys, can we wrap it up? All right, I'll take that as a yes. So, audience, I want every one of you to go down the description. All these guys have their own channels. I've linked them in the description. They have also all been on my show for the 20 to 30 minute edited, short films I do of interesting and or funny things. I think all at least twice, except for Philip. But Philip and I have a second one coming up.
We have something special on Friday, I believe.
Something completely different. But yeah, thank you so much for watching and tuning in. Gentlemen, thank you for joining me. There's a British insult on the screen to say goodbye. They paid for it, so I put it up. I'm going to, leave us now. If you do not know Russia, you only know about what you read. I'm going to leave you all with a montage of my family in Russia. And thanks for watching. It looks like a palace of some sort. Oh, that guy's got
present date.
Russia is a real place with real people, and thanks for watching.